All right, everyone. Hello. Welcome to today's Skill Up session. My name is Emily Sprenger. I am a graduate learning specialist in the Graduate Study Support Center. And we are excited to have one of our very own faculty members coming to present today, Bob Diotta-Levy. And today he will be diving into Public Skills 101. I want to do a few brief housekeeping items before we jump into today's session. We are going to be recording today's session, so if you would like a copy of that, I will provide that to all of the attendees who registered. We have scrolling subtitles available at the bottom of your Zoom. You are able to enable that. We would like you to have conversation in the chat. So if you have some questions, we would prefer that you would post those in the Q&A. That way, I don't lose it in the chat. But with that being said, I'm excited to turn this over to Bob, who has years of experience in public speaking and communication, and we are excited to dive into today's session. So without further ado, Bob, passing this to you.
Thank you much, Emily. It's nice to see all of you here, and I appreciate you being here. And as Emily mentioned, this is Public Speaking Skills 101. I have a subtitle, Calming Fears and Moving Forward. And I hope in this brief hour, we're going to do that. As Emily mentioned, also, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. She'll relay them to me. You don't have to wait till the very end, okay? Because you might forget or we might run out of time, okay? And of course, we're going to have questions later on as well, okay, at the end. This be me. I've been an academician for 31 years. I know that's longer than some of you have been alive. I know I'm old, okay, you don't have to remind me. But first of all, kudos also to Emily for saying my name right. It's Diotta-Levy, and most people can't say it, so they call me Bob or they call me Dr. D. Out of the 31 years, I've been at Florida Gulf Coast University. That's a great public institution here in Fort Myers, Florida. And regarding what Emily was saying, yeah, it's been like 90s every single day here for 2 weeks. We basically have like now 1 day of winter, 1 day of fall, 1 day of spring, and the rest is summer, okay? So it's been a little bit hot, but we're doing okay. And I've been here 3 years at this institution. I mainly teach paralegal. I teach for the JFK School of Law. I've developed about 8 courses. I've developed about 3 for our paralegal program and also 5 for our new program, our MLB. No, that's not Major League Baseball, okay? It is, but it's the Masters of Law and Business, which is rolling out this month. Stay tuned. We're going to have some announcements on that as well. If you want to get a master's in law and business, I'll be teaching in that too. I've been an attorney, a lawyer in Florida and Massachusetts for the past 37 years, and I used to be a broadcaster. Formerly, I was a news director, assistant news director. I was a production director, a staff announcer for several years, about 8-9 years there in Massachusetts. And I understand we have some folks from Cape Cod here. So welcome. That's my old stomping grounds. I was born in Milford, Massachusetts, which is right down from Worcester, the second largest city in Massachusetts. I remember back in the day, some of you are too young to remember this, unless you watch MeTV or TV Land or Nickelodeon. But there's a show, Kojak, starring Telly Savalas, and his assistant, Robert Crocker, said, "We have a telex from Worcester, Massachusetts," to which he replied, "Worcester, Crocker, it's Worcester." And so that's basically what it is. So I lived kind of that area for quite some time. All right, now we have a law term, and it's called caveat. Some of you have heard it, caveat emptor, caveat vendor, let the buyer beware, let the seller beware. Well, caveat you. We cannot do it all today. We're going to try to do it, folks, best we can, but I've taken multiple courses in broadcasting and speaking. I've taught courses like that, and I could go on for 16 weeks, mainly because I'm a lawyer, I'm a broadcaster, I'm long-winded, but we cannot do everything. We're going to kind of hit the highlights, okay? We'll do our best. Now, do you view public speaking like this? Pulling teeth? Some of us don't like public speaking, and I don't blame you. There have been studies, and people are asked, what's your biggest fear? And number 2 is death. Number one, religiously for decades, has been having to speak in public. So I know a lot of this is kind of new to some people. A lot of it is kind of, do I really have to do this? It's kind of like making out my will, going to a seminar about cremation, something like that. Do I really have to think about this stuff now? Well, I applaud all of you for being here because, first of all, you're tackling this and you want to learn more about being an effective public speaker. I'm not saying I'm the greatest public speaker. I've just had some years at it and I've developed some skills and the like. Now, back to Massachusetts, when I was in college, I said "bod," "havet," and "ka," and all that stuff, "soder," and things like that. But in college for the 4 years, they beat it out of me. Okay. So I kind of dropped the accent. You might hear it slip in sometime. I might say, go to your ka, but for the most part, it's gone. I have degrees in accounting, communication, taxation, and law. And again, I've been teaching for decades. I've been speaking, doing tons of public speaking, done about 90 presentations online and live, and about 70 manuscripts in print. So I like writing and speaking. I'm a communication major. Some of you saying, ugh, it's like accounting, statistics, foreign languages. Get me out of here as fast as you can. Okay. So we all have our quirks. I have a brother who hates communication. He's a science and math type guy. So same like my son. But we're going to try to tackle it. We're going to do the best we can. Now, there are 4 basic types of public speaking. There's ceremonial, speaking on a special occasion. That's like a wedding. There's demonstrative, think demonstration or teaching. That's kind of what I'm doing right now. It's a teaching session. There's informative speaking. That's providing information like a decision has been made. National University, our president is on now doing a YouTube broadcast, doing Facebook, and the president is now going to tell us about the new budget, about the new building. That's informative. It provides information. Then there's persuasion. Think of selling. You're a salesperson. You're trying to sell a point or you're trying to persuade somebody. These are the 4 basic things that you will do in your life. My brother Richard hates public speaking. When I got married, 5 minutes before I went out to see my future wife-to-be, he said, "I don't know what to say for the toast. Can you write me something out?" And I said to him, "I'm getting married in 5 minutes." I had to write him a little speech, and I'm telling you, he was nervous. He's a great guy, but he's not a public speaker. So I know a lot of you fit in that boat. I was in that boat up until high school, college, and then I just fell in love with it. But some of us, I know it's like pulling the teeth. Okay, I get it. President John Kennedy said one time, quote, "The only reason to give a speech is to change the world." And that's exactly right. He's spot on. So if you want to change the world, if you want to really get your point across, if you want to be effective at your job, in school, in life, maybe at your church or mosque or synagogue or whatever the case may be, with your friends, hobbies, it's great to have public speaking skills. Now, this session we're doing, it's not going to make you a public speaker overnight, but I want to give you some handy dandy tips and the like as to how to be a better communicator. JFK's speaking advice, he said one time, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And that's what I'm going to do for you today. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, then I'm going to tell you about it, and then I'm going to tell you what we covered. So this is my view on public speaking in a nutshell. I'm Italian. This is rigatoni. It's delicious. It looks like pregnant ziti. Some of you have had it. This is ziti. This is rigatoni. This is ziti. Does it look better this way or this way? This way or this way? Don't you just can't stand it when the eye doctor does that. But anyway, I'm Italian. This is rigatoni. When I order rigatoni at many restaurants, they bring me this. That is not rigatoni. So my advice to you is if you're speaking on rigatoni, speak on rigatoni. Don't try to pass it off as ziti. Try to be clear, crisp, concise, but be honest. Be ethical in your speaking and make sure you cover what you're supposed to cover. Perception's everything in speaking. What do you see here? There are 3 possibilities of what you can see here. Some of you see a woman, right? Some of you see a man. And some of you see both. All depends how you look at things. If you want to look at the lady, well, don't focus on the man, focus on the left side, that beautiful flowing hair she has. And where you see the man, kind of almost like a crook where his hair starts, well, that's her nose and that's her mouth. Same thing for the eyes, they're sharing the eyes. If you can't see the man, well, just cover up the lady's hair and you'll see the man. His hair is short. His nose is on the other side, of course, because he's facing the opposite way. Do you see them both now? Some see a man at first blush, some see a lady, some see both. Perception is everything. How you present yourself, how you speak, how you act, body movement, body language, the crowd, it's all a key in effective public speaking. Here are the points we're going to cover, folks. We're going to go over listening skills, the dreaded fear, and speaking skills today. Now, let's talk about hearing versus listening. Hearing is different than listening. Merriam-Webster defines hearing as, quote, the process, function, or power of perceiving sound, specifically the special sense by which noises and tones are received as stimuli. You've got it from your significant other, right? Your wife, your husband, your kids. You're not listening to me. I heard you. Yeah, but you're not listening. So we need to have effective listening skills. Listening means, quote, to pay attention to sound, to hear something with thoughtful attention, and to give consideration. See the difference between hearing and listening? You're hearing me right now, but I'll bet you're not listening to everything I say. And it's impossible to. So I'm not trying to knock you or trying to, feel bad for myself. But basically, that's what happens. Many of us, for the most part, hear, we don't listen. We have one mouth. We have two ears. There's a reason for that. So we should hear twice as much as we should talk, right? Do we really listening? While listening skills is a skill universities laud, very rarely do they teach it. I took a communication course, interpersonal communication, back in the 70s in college. Yes, I said I was old, and yes, my back hurts for some reason. So I had that course, interpersonal. And in the first month, all we talked about was listening skills. We practiced effective listening skills. Oh, I wish they had this in medical school. Hey, I'm a lawyer. I wish they had this in law school. A study shows that while 78% of accredited undergrad business schools list presenting as a learning goal, only 11% identify listening as a such goal. Wow. So we really need to be effective listeners. We'll be better students, better spouses, better parents, better kids for our parents. We'll be more effective in our jobs as well if we listen more. More stats. How much time do people spend listening? People spend 70 to 80% of their day engaging in some form of communication and 55% to listening. So most of the time people are talking rather than listening. What's the average speaking rate? Some people are chattier than others, but on average, the typical person utters 125 to 175 words a minute. Think of all the words I've just said in the past 15 minutes. How many words do we listen to? Your ears work faster. The average number of words you're able to listen to per minute is 450. How much of what we hear is absorbed? And this comes from creditdonkey.com, by the way, if you want to Google it. Even though your ears are capable of picking up so many words, your brain doesn't necessarily process all of them. Most people only remember 17 to 25% of things they listen to. So unfortunately for me, you're going to forget probably a lot of this, but that's why we're going to put it up for you online. The listening process involves 4 stages: receiving, understanding, evaluating, and responding. An effective listener must hear and identify the speech sounds directed toward them. That's why it's so important to be an effective speaker. Understand the message of those sounds. That's why it's important to be clear and concise. Critically evaluate or assess that message. That's why we need good evaluation skills. Remember what's being said. Well, that's paying attention, listening, and then respond verbally or non-verbally to the information that they've received. What constitutes a good listener? A good listener is someone who focuses completely on what another person's saying and engages with their ideas in a thoughtful, comprehensive way. Good listening is not just about learning what a person's saying, but making a commitment to digest the information. It's almost like taking in food. The info, they're presented and they respond constructively. What do good listeners strive? What do they want to accomplish? Good listeners always strive to fully understand what others are communicating, particularly when the statement lacks clarity. That's when you ask questions, right? Listening requires the ability to decode and interpret verbal messages. Sometimes someone will be speaking to you. If they've got their arms folded, psychologists say they're mad at you. They are not listening. They're closing themselves. And there are nonverbal cues as well as the verbal. There are nonverbal. I'm Italian, so I tend to speak a lot with my hands. Tone of voice. Are they mad? Are they excited? Facial expressions and physical posture. If they're sitting with their arms folded, then probably they don't want to be very communicative to you or listen to you. Active listening has three aspects. They're called cognitive, emotional, and behavioral. And this is more into psychology now, not exactly my realm, but I've studied it. Paying attention to all the information, explicitly what is being thrown out there, explicit and implicit, what's being implied, maybe by their vocal qualities, maybe their tone of voice, they sound mad, maybe their cues that they're giving with their body or eye contact or whatever. You're receiving, comprehending, and integrating that, just like a computer bank. That's your cognition. There's emotional listening too, and active listening. It has three aspects, remember: cognitive, emotional, behavioral. Number two, emotional, staying calm and compassionate during the conversation, including managing any emotional reactions. You could have annoyance, you could have boredom, you might be downright red in the face. So you have emotional things to deal with. And then behavioral, conveying interest and comprehension verbally and non-verbally. Maybe you're looking at someone speaking and you're shaking your head, giving them the thumbs up, or maybe you're raising your hand, asking a question, you're conveying interest. Hey, I'd like to learn more about this. So whether it's a sales pitch or someone's demonstrating something or giving you an informational or teaching lecture, these are the aspects of listening, and your mind and your body are doing them all at once within seconds. Active listening is a particular communication technique that requires the listener to provide feedback or by way of restating or paraphrasing what they've heard in their own words. The goal of this repetition is to confirm what the listener has heard and to confirm the understanding of both parties. I'm an academician. I love questions because if one person asks a question in a classroom of 30, that means 10 or 20 of them have the same question and aren't understanding. And many times at the end, they'll say, Dr. D, or they'll say to their compadre, hey, Bill, hey, Karen, thanks for asking that. I was wondering the same thing. I was kind of afraid to ask her. I don't want to sound stupid, so I'll let you sound stupid. No, the only stupid question is the one not asked. Remember that. The ability to actively listen demonstrates sincerity and that nothing is being assumed or taken for granted. That means your biases and your prejudices, you got to check at the door. Active listening is most often used to improve personal relationships, reduce misunderstanding and conflicts, strengthen cooperation, and foster understanding. When engaging with a particular speaker, a listener can use several degrees of active listening, each resulting in a different quality of communication with the speaker. It's important to keep in mind that these listening skills are based in the American style of communicating. If your consultee seems uncomfortable or confused, try something else. More on active listening. When engaging with a particular speaker, a listener can use several degrees of active listening, each resulting in a different quality of communication with the speaker. It's important, folks, to keep in mind these listening skills, again, are based on the style of American communicating. You're repeating yourself, Dr. D. I know. If there's confusion, if there's problems, if there's issues, ask questions. Ask them to slow down. Ask them to maybe say it another way. And I urge, especially you students, to do it. And I urge you professors and academicians to do it. Read your audience and see when you get those blank expressions, something's not clicking. Okay, when they're talking to each other and really just totally confused or totally not on point with you, then something's going on. You're losing your audience. Okay. Here's some listening tips from Dr. D. Pay attention. Give the speaker your undivided attention and acknowledge the message. I know some of you right now are eating lunch. Some of you right now are on your computer doing a term paper. Some of you professors are maybe looking at your emails. Shouldn't do that. Show that you're listening. Heed the message. Show interest. Defer judgment. Well, I don't like lawyers, and I don't like men with mustaches, and I don't like people that teach, and I don't like Italians. Don't judge. Keep an open mind, listen to both sides. Respond appropriately, ask good questions, and provide teachers. Again, we academicians love it. Audience participation, surveys, that when we have these talks and all, love them, so do them. Here's some listening opportunities. An interviewer notices a candidate doesn't look her in the eye when asserting a key strength. Oh, a customer, a service worker repeats a patron's problem or complaint back to reassure them that we're listening. We love that. An interviewer asks a follow-up question to gain further clarification from a candidate that's applied a critical skill in the past job. Terrific, they're showing interest. Maybe they like me. A manager summarizes what her team said during a staff meeting and asks them if she has heard things correctly. That's all good reinforcement. I care about you. I'm listening. At the end of a performance review, an employee restates the specific areas in which a supervisor asks he improve. Supervisors love that. At a client meeting, a salesperson asks an open-ended question like, what can I do to serve you better? And encourages his counterpart to express any concerns fully. You care about me. How about the medical field, the law field? A nurse informs a patient she's aware of how scared they are about their upcoming surgery and says she's there for her. Love it. And a paralegal or lawyer pays careful attention to a speaker at a training session and asks clarifying questions about the information they're getting, the information they're receiving. Or paralegal or lawyer asks a client to summarize their problems. All right, so we got listening skills. Let's talk about it. It's there. It's right in front of you. You got it, the elephant in the room. Let's talk about fear. This on the right is Mel Brooks. He is one of my favorite comedians and writers, producers, directors of all time. He has done some fabulous movies, and that's one of them. It's called High Anxiety, where he plays a psychologist, Dr. Richard, who has this fear of heights. And it's very much a takeoff of all of the Alfred Hitchcock films, The Birds and North by Northwest and Rear Window. Just absolutely fantastic. If you've never seen it, Google it, Mel Brooks. So I put his image there because Mel, even though he's a psychologist, used to get tremendously fearful about a certain thing. Are you anxious or fearful about speaking in public? If you are, I'm glad you're here. So please, buckle up. This is from Jerry Seinfeld. According to most statistics, people's number one fear is speaking in public. No, number two is death. Death is number two. Does that sound right? This means to the average person, if you go to a funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy. And that's Jerry Seinfeld in a nutshell. Mark Twain on public speaking, Samuel Clemens. There are only two types of speakers in the world. First, the nervous, and second, liars. Everybody gets nervous, folks. Everybody has qualms and trepidations about public speaking. Of course, FDR, in his famous speech after Pearl Harbor, said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And that's exactly right. Because everybody, especially if you're in a public speaking class like I've taken, if you have to do a presentation, if you're a teacher, everybody's in the same boat. Everybody at one point has to get up and do public speaking. But my favorite quote is from Edward Everett Hale. He was an American author, historian, minister, and he was the grandnephew of Nathan Hale. You probably are familiar with him. He was an American spy during the Revolution, and of course, he was hanged. He said, Everett Hale, I am only one, but I am one. I can't do everything, but I can do something. The something I ought to do, I can do, and by the grace of God, I will. That should be in everybody's home somewhere, stitched on a pillow or something, that you can do this if you put your mind into it and put it to it. Now, if you are fearful of speaking, you have glossophobia. It sounds like you don't like glossaries in a book or something, but that's what they call it, glossophobia. So now you know the technical term. It is a very common phobia. It's the fear of public speaking. Some individuals may feel slight nervousness at the thought of speaking. Others have full panic and fear. Well, that's why we're here. We're going to talk about anxiety, managing and using your emotions. So there's some stats for you. Around 15 million people deal with fear of public speaking on a daily basis. 75% of the population has a fear of public speaking. More than 200 million say they're nervous about it. 40 million people in the US aged 18 or older suffer from different forms of anxiety when it comes to public speaking. 90% of the population reports some shyness when it comes to giving a speech in public. 74% of statistics brain survey respondents admit to having speech anxiety. 10% of the population loves speaking in front of people. They're crazy. Hello, I look in the mirror. 10% are absolutely terrified. 80%, again, somewhere in the middle, 6% of men in America, women fear it a little bit more, 8%. Now, other stats, 90% of, no, I just minimized myself. Hold on a second. What do you do when you make a mistake? You ignore it. 90% of the anxiety we feel before making a presentation comes from lack of preparation. Confidence increases with age. Well, that's why maybe I feel good about this. 69% of people age 45 or over, like me, feel quite confident, very confident, compared to only 25% of folks, especially our students here watching, 16 to 24-year-olds. Survey respondents who had a high school diploma or less expressed more fear than college graduates. So I guess that's really what they mean. Education is power, right? Research estimates the price tag put on treating anxiety disorders and phobias such as glossophobia is between $42.3 and $46.6 billion a year, with all kind of antidepressants and the like. Pills that are being pushed. And then that's from Cross River Therapy. If you'd like, I'd love to send you that. By the way, I'm going to give you my email at the end. So if you'd like that link or anything else, and of course, Emily's going to put this up later. So what scares us? What's in that head of ours there? Speech anxiety is a feeling or feelings of discomfort felt before, during, after speaking in public. It's normal. It's natural. It's manageable, folks. You can do this. It is handleable. I don't know if that's a word. I made that up. Fear of attention. No one's looking at me. No one's paying attention. Fear of failure. I'm going to flop. They're going to just hate me. And fear of being ridiculous. They're going to laugh at me. So a minute ago, I made that mistake. I kind of minimized my screen. Just move on. In broadcasting, we used to have this term, check that. A broadcaster will never, ever say, oh, I made a mistake. Oh, how stupid I am. Oh, I'm so sorry. They'll say something like, today, there were 5 million people protesting in Egypt. Check that, I mean, India. And they move on. Or check that, today's not Friday. It's Thursday. And you move on. You let the error go by. No one's going to think you're ridiculous. If you get a few smirks or whatever, oh, well. But you're not going to fail if you have a game plan. You're not going to fail if you can grasp their attention. And you're not going to be ridiculous because you're going to take that goal that you have, take that mission head on and challenge it and overcome it. Why does all this matter? Well, if you have high anxiety, like Mel Brooks did, if you have high levels, you struggle to complete speaking assignments, you students. You avoid classes. You don't take speaking classes. Sometimes they're ice cream classes. Nothing against the communication folks here. I'm a communication major, but many times they're fun. And you have to write a speech. And if you like doing it, if you get used to it, well, you don't have to do statistics. You don't have to learn French, which those to me are harder. They also miss out on an important learning skill, a life skill, and they suffer unnecessarily. You really do. It's a self-inflicted wound. Self-criticizing, I'm a terrible speaker. Avoiding prep and practicing, I'll just wing it, that's suicide. Self-pressure, I have to be perfect. No, you don't, I just made a mistake. And negative thinking, I cannot do this. Those are all self-inflicted wounds that we got to get over and got to get around and stop it. What are the physical effects of this glossophobia? From your brain to your body. When it starts in the brain, when you have fear, it becomes a physical reaction. Why do we fear? Many people fear public speaking because it's our body's natural reaction and the stress kicks in. And all of a sudden now, our body's sympathetic nervous system kicks in. With that, we sweat, we fidget, our heart races. We start maybe playing with our hands. We start stuttering. We start, maybe I need a little drink of water here because I'm getting a little bit parched here and I'm having trouble. This can be calmed down. You can take a drink of water. You can look at your notes. You can pause. No one is going to kill you and nobody's going to die from it. Did you guys die from it when I took the sip of water? No. But if we can calm down that sympathetic nervous system reaction and not sweat and not fidget, you say, well, Dr. D, it's easy for you. You've been doing this for decades. Everything takes practice. Hey, did you get in a car and drive immediately, even though you saw your mom and dad drive? Of course not. Did you pick up French immediately? You knew bonjour, but that was about it. And by the time you get out of French 2, you could say sentences. It all takes time. Again, caveat here, we're not going to do it all today. Look at the fight or flight response. Our heart races, our stomach aches, our blood vessels constrict, we get tense and shaky muscles, chills, sweating. I put that twice in there because it's important, and it's 2 things. Dry mouth, quick breathing. All of a sudden now I'm just going to take a breath and stop the heart, and not completely, of course, but get it down to a good level and just calm down. Maybe mop the brow a little bit if you're sweating. No one is going to fault you for that. There are 4 myths about anxiety, so make sure we don't make any mistakes about them. Number 1, speech anxiety is normal. Myth 1, there's something wrong with me. No, we just did all those stats there. We proved the majority of Americans don't like public speaking. It's experienced by 3/4 of the population in some way, shape, or form at any given time. Myth 2, memorizing reduces anxiety. No, it causes more anxiety, because now if you forget it, now you're really in trouble, and you're going to start sweating, and you're going to start getting, oh no, they're going to think I'm a fool. So have some note cards, not full-blown notes. Don't read everything word for word for word, like I'm trying not to do, but have some note cards. Have them numbered. So that way, if you drop them on the floor, you say, excuse me, folks, can you give me a minute? And you can quickly number them 1 through 10. It'll take 30 seconds. Remember your theses and your main points. Have those in your head. There are 3 things we're going to talk about today. I've got those in my head. Delivery tends to sound more canned when you memorize it. It sounds like a robot. Mistakes are disastrous. Oh, I just made, how many? Are you keeping track? I don't know how many I've made. Probably several. Most mistakes go unnoticed, and mistakes can humanize your presentation and make you more approachable to your audience. Oh, I dropped my notes. I hate when that happens. Yesterday I was feeding the dog there, and I dropped the bowl all over the place. Did anyone ever do that? And all of a sudden, they now say, you have a dog? I love dogs. Yeah, I've done that before. You're relating to your audience. Great speakers don't get nervous. Are you kidding me? Most speakers get nervous before speeches. Winston Churchill of England reported being physically ill prior to speaking before Parliament. It happens. Journalist Edward R. Murrow, who, of course, they named the Edward R. Murrow Journalism Award every year. It's one of the best awards you can get. I was in journalism. The best speakers know enough to be scared, he said. The only difference between the pros and the novices is that the pros have trained the butterflies to fly in formation. Demosthenes was a famous Greek. And do you have something important to say but feel overwhelmed by the thought of sharing it with others? Consider Demosthenes. He lived between 384 and 322 BC. He wanted to be an orator and a leader, but he didn't have a clear, strong, or pleasant voice. People had trouble understanding him. He decided to work on his speaking skills. He would walk down to the sea, put pebbles in his mouth. Some people use marbles. I wouldn't advise that. And shout to the crashing waves. Don't try this at home, okay? I don't want anyone emailing me. I went to the doctor. They had to remove 6 marbles. His practice paid off. He became one of the greatest orators in history. Remember that name, Demosthenes. What causes poor speaking habits? Lack of experience. Speaking in front of others is something you can get used to. The more you do it, the more you get up in front of a crowd and talk, the more confident you'll be, and the less you'll have anxiety about it. Poor planning. It sounds silly, but many people with a fear of public speaking also practice less than those with the fear, and they don't plan as much. Planning includes, me doing this PowerPoint presentation for you to put that up, and Emily to help me out, but also all of the planning behind it. Practice it. Maybe practice it in front of people. You get anxiety because now you go, uh-oh, I really don't know this. I guess I should have practiced more. This lack of preparation, this poor planning makes you more nervous, and then all the stuff kicks in, like we said, about that psychological stuff. Communication, I like all these C's here. I got 6 C's. It needs to be clear, concise, correct, coherent, complete, and courteous. And I want to focus in on some of them. To me, the real biggies here, correct. Make sure you have your stuff correct. Because if you lie to people, you're telling them falsehoods, they're never going to believe you again. And courteous. Make sure you treat your audience with courtesy. The rest will all fall into place. You have your prep, you're going to be clear. You're going to be concise if you have a time limit or anything. And as a result, hopefully it'll all come through as you practice and as you get better coherently. There are 6 steps that I have for effective communication. Analyze your purpose and your audience. Emily told me there were going to be academicians, there were going to be students here, there were going to be maybe staff members. So I'm trying to hit with a broad brush and paint that way something that maybe helps everybody, not just students, not just faculty. Research your topic. Make sure you know what you're talking about and have evidence. Support your ideas with examples or maybe citations if it's a course. Organize and outline. Make sure you know what you're talking about. Come up with an organizational outline. Have all those note cards and all. Do not have pieces of paper because they crinkle. And then all of a sudden you're going to be crinkling that paper and it's going to be like you sound like you're eating potato chips. Okay, so don't do that. Use a PowerPoint or use something maybe like I said, note cards. Draft and edit. Every time you write, whether you write a paper, you write something for a professor for homework, you're doing a memo, for me, a brief, always draft and edit. Do the PowerPoint and keep going and going back, just like your note cards. You might have to rewrite them 3 or 4 times. Fight for feedback. I want feedback from you folks today, as Emily mentioned, and we want your opinion at the end, and we want to know if this is being effective, if you're learning anything. And that's a great way to get audience participation. Now, the difference between auditory and visual learners, I'm both. Auditory learners can learn through listening. That's what you're doing now. If that's your cup of tea, if that's your bag, you're an auditory learner. Visual has to observe. I like both. So that's why with the PowerPoint, I like the lecture and I like being able to see things, seeing the words and all. Some of you just are listening. You're not looking at my PowerPoint. Others are reading along, reading ahead of me and ignoring some of the stuff I'm saying. Well, it's the type of learner you are. Auditory learners learn best by hearing and reading. Visuals like to see the visual images. Reading, yes, but also the imagery to it. Let's talk about your voice here. What's the difference between volume and pitch? Volume is how loudly or softly you speak. It's a verbal technique. So as a result, if you're trying to drive something home, you say, hey, this is important, as opposed to, we're so sorry about your loss. It's such a shame that your cat passed away. I'm sure you loved your cat, and so you know when to pitch, when to go up or down, highness or lowness, but also volume, how loudly or how softly. And you can do peaks and valleys here with this. Changing your volume to emphasize a point using softer level again is always effective. You don't keep pounding and pounding and pounding. You know when to quiet down a little bit, and you don't talk like this all the time, because people are going to strain to hear. Okay, practice, bring a friend along, ask a friend to move around, move various parts of the room and let you know whether they can hear you, move around the room, that is. Know how loudly you must talk. Go to your room. Now here I'm on the internet. I know exactly, Emily's controlling the volume and everything, okay? So the volume's okay. But if you're in a room, go to the room maybe a half hour, 15 minutes ahead of time and, spot it out and see the audience members. If they're going to sit way in the back and they're straining, well, then they're going to tune you out. Change your volume. Pitch is the highness or lowness of your sound. To use pitch, you need to practice as a singer does. So pitch can be really comfortable. This is my pitch. I have a naturally deep voice. But if you're really wanting to emphasize something, you talk really higher, or you talk just calm down and deepen and go down a little bit, high to low. You got it? Volume is loud and soft. Pitch is high and low. And, vary them. People judge your intelligence based upon the tone of your voice and how fast you speak. In a published study, the Journal of Psychological Science, MBA students from the University of Chicago were videotaped giving pitches, or sales, that is, not pitches, on why they should be hired. Prospective employers and professional recruiters were given 3 options: view the video, listen to the audio, or read a transcript. And I'll give you the website if you want it. I'll send it to you. Evaluators rated a candidate as more competent, thoughtful, and intelligent when they heard a pitch rather than read it. and as a result, had a more favorable impression of the candidate and were more interested in hiring the candidate. Adding voice to written pitches, sales pitches that is, by having trained actors or untrained adults read them, produced the same results. Adding visual cues to audio pitches did not alter evaluations of the candidates. For conveying one's intellect, it's important that one's voice literally can be heard. It is much better for us, and we go to the movies, we watch TV, we listen to the radio, whatever, we want to hear rather than just read it. What do you want to do? Do you want to read The Wizard of Oz, or do you want to see the little munchkins? And, this is Jessica Tarloff. Some of you know her. She works for Fox News. She's a contributor. She is a Democrat contributor, and so she has to fight a lot with the folks because most of them are conservative. Jessica's a singer. I don't mean she sings songs. I mean she sings song. Avoid being sing-song when you speak. And what that is, it's like a roller coaster. So let me do Jessica for you. Jessica will say, this is Jessica Tarloff, and I'm going to talk to you really about a very important thing today regarding President Biden. And she goes up and down like the roller coaster. It drives me crazy, but that's her style. She does sing-song. Don't do sing-song, okay? To me, I think you're going to lose the audience, and they're going to listen to how you talk, as opposed to listening to really what you're saying, okay? So that's one of Dr. D's tips. Body language, let's go on to that. I know we're getting short on time. Body language is an essential skill. As you know, I'm Italian, so I'm using the hands a lot. Move around, use it wisely. I'm not saying move around, like a top, or move around like up and down like a roller coaster, but it gives you an edge on what people are thinking just by watching the movements. People like movements. People like you to move around the room. Fiddling and fidgeting. Fiddling on the left, fidgeting on the right. Don't do either one of them. Don't have a pen in your hand. I know there's a preacher friend of mine at a church, and he always has a pen, and he's doing this. Drives me insane. I watch him on the internet, and I don't want to be critical, but when you do this, everybody's being mesmerized by the pen. It's kind of like you see these hypnotists. Focus on my eyes, And it's the same thing. So don't fiddle, don't fidget. Try to kind of be, with a movement attitude, but don't do too much. As a kind of a delicate balance. Don't do the Mexican hat dance. I had a professor, George Wharton, when I went to school, and he did the Mexican hat dance. And most of you know what that is. You're going back and forth when you're talking, and everyone's looking at you like you're doing a dance, okay? So the movement should be kind of tempered. You should have some movement, some hand gesture, but not all over the universe. Kind of do it the way you like it. Don't overdo, don't underdo. Types of improper speakers. There is somebody called the life rafters. These hang on to the podium like the Titanic's going down. Move. The hand washers, kind of like a Shakespeare play, trying to wash the hands of Lady Macbeth. These speakers put all their nervousness in their hands, like they're making dough. I'm Italian, so I watch my mom, make the dough. The caged tigers, they're pacing back and forth. It's distracting. The rockers, they're sitting in a chair like I am. They're rocking back and forth. Speaking of the Titanic, you're getting seasick. The pocket maniacs, these people have their hands in their pockets and they won't take them out. This is all done because of stress, right? And the pen clickers, I told you, my buddy who preaches, clicking that pen. Try not to do distracting things. It's improper. Try not to hang on, but move around. But don't do all this moving around, like that Mexican hat dance. Move your hands a little bit. Move from side to side, but don't be the caged tiger and don't be the rocker, okay? Proper use of the hands. Yeah, keep those hands somewhere locked until you need them, locked and loaded, okay? Here's some tips that I have for you for effective speaking. I hope it helps you. Don't bring the whole script to the stage. I mentioned that before. You don't have time to look at all these papers. And if you drop them or shake them, you're going to hear this paper shaking. Like I got this Post-it. Hear that? Very distracting. Use cue cards, as I mentioned, some key words, but don't write the whole thing out because you're going to be with a cue card like this. The topic of my speech today, and what did I just do? I hid my face. You can't see my expressions. Now I'm masking my voice. You might not be able to hear me as well. Now I'm so stuck there, I don't have the movement. I'm not making the contact with the audience. Use key words, PowerPoint slides, whatever you'd like, but keep them to a limit. Prepare to start strong. Capture your audience like a big game hunter. bagging a lion. You can't talk quietly and mutter and hope that you'll break out of it, be more confident later. Have a good pace. Time yourself. Before you do the speech, if you're only given 5 minutes, you better time yourself. You've written 30 minutes of stuff. Don't speak too fast or too slow. Don't speak too fast or too slow. Don't speak too fast or too slow. Don't attempt to speak in a completely steady manner, measuring out every word evenly. I had a geometry teacher in high school. She was monotone, and it was geometry. And she'd say, today we're going to talk about angles. And we're going to cover the material that we covered last time. I felt like jumping out a window. I'm not a math person. My brother is, my son is, I'm not. I teach accounting, but I'm not a calculus genius. And it was tough going through that class. Don't come off monotone and boring like she did. This combination of slow and fast, medium speeds, make your speech more engaging. Be confident. Be confident. You can do this. Open your mouth and speak loudly. Have proper diction. Remember putting the shells or the marbles in your mouth. I'd rather put food in my mouth. I'm Italian. I just put pasta in my mouth. And even more tips. Keep the level of eye contact, okay? Make sure that as you have your eye contact, make sure that people are looking at you and you're looking at them. So as a result, if you've got eye contact proper, you're not staring at them, into it, but at the same time, you're not losing them. Bring movement to your speech. Like I said, kind of move your hands around, make sure that you have good movement. Open your arms and, see, my New England accent. Open your arms, not arms, and show your palms or your pams. Avoid closed gestures again, crossing your arms, crossing your legs. Engage participation. Have a question and answer period. So as a result, you're going to slow down. You're going to go, are there any questions? Anybody have anything would you like me to repeat anything? Is there anything that I said, it maybe is not clear to you? Does anybody have any generic questions about this presentation, what I've covered, or maybe something totally different? I'd be happy to answer them. Be open with the audience. 7 common mistakes in public speaking. We've hit them, but we're going to hit them again and again and again. Lack of preparation. Make sure you're prepared. Speaking too softly, too fast, too slowly, too loud. Avoiding eye contact and weird movements, the Mexican hat dance or the closed fist or grabbing yourself or sitting and grabbing the desk or grabbing that podium. Reading word for word from the slides, too scripted. Now, I've been reading from my slides, but I try to get off them too. Some people like it to see the words. Remember those visual people. Some people like to also hear examples and the audio people. Dull, no introduction, no conclusion. That kills you. They don't know when you're going to start, when you're going to end. Where's this going? It's like a freight train going off the track. Making a speech too long. Having no energy, low energy. They're there to hear you, to see you. Some tips for you. Breathe. Breathe from your diaphragm. It's like singing. Admit you're nervous. Say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a public speaker, so you're going to have to keep up with me, be patient with me. That reminds me of a story. The first time I ever spoke in public. You've got them. Tell the story. Use minimal notes. If you can, use no notes, but that's dangerous. Maybe have some cards with you just in case you need to, like a crutch. Be comfortable with the pause. Be comfortable with the pause. There are pauses in speaking. Be aware of your hand gestures, especially if you're Italian. It's a curse. Move around some, but not too much. Incorporate visual prompts. Maybe you bring your little dog in, or you bring a vase in. Hey, I painted this. I made this, a sculpture, painting, whatever. And practice, practice, practice. Right? Now, you sports fans, you're talking about practice. Here we are big. You talking practice. Okay, so if you know who Allen Iverson is, you understand what I'm saying. If you don't, it's okay. Use a mirror. Use a live audience. Let's talk about the signpost up ahead, the Twilight Zone. Signposts. Consider adding signposts to your presentation or speech. Think of them like bullet points, numbers, subsections. Your speech, I have 5 elements of this speech. The 5 elements are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For the third element of success, or whatever number you're on, look to the audience. Say, do you have numbers 1 and 2? Can I move on now? Ask them, read them, gauge them. It also creates suspense. If you're a fan of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And if you know the songs there, there's a part where Dr. Frankenfurter says anticipation. And so, that's exactly what you want to do. You want the audience to hang with you, and you want them to have some suspense. It's like reading a book from cover to cover. And now they're saying, oh, wow, we've gone through 3 points. We have 2 more left. And we're coming to the end. I wonder how it's going to wrap up. I wonder what he's going to tell us or she's going to tell us. A speaking exercise, try recording your voice in an informal setting, like at home. Listen carefully to how you sound. This will help you get accustomed to your own voice. You might also put some notes or aspects of your speech which reduce the overall effectiveness of your speech. This might include a tendency to say a lot, to slur letters together or stammer slightly. So as you practice makes perfect. You'll notice these things as you record yourself, or maybe informally give it to your parents, your significant other, whatever. Okay, I got some speaking exercises. We're running out of time. I promise I will send them to you if you want. But notice how I put too much stuff in this PowerPoint because I got off point. Oh, well, it's not going to kill me. I did that intentionally. If we slow down a little bit, okay. Speak with intent to move people to action. Know what you want. Know what your audience wants. If nobody does anything different than you spoke before, the value of your speech is 0. If they didn't get it last time, they won't get it this time. Start with a strong grabber, a personal story, a quote, a shocking statistic, something that holds your audience and gets them hooked like you're a Fisher person, okay? Give the chance to the audience to see your personal connection to the topic. Structure your material in 3 sections, a grabber, a middle, and the close. Get really interested in the topic. Do stories and all. Practice, practice, practice. We said that. Know your audience. We said that. Know the setup. We said that. Relax. Remember, only one person is known to have died from public speaking. What, Dr. D? Yeah, it was President William Henry Harrison. Really, it was from pneumonia he suffered after giving the longest inaugural address in history. He didn't die from public speaking. He spoke out there. It was bone chilling. They took him to the hospital and he died within a short time. You're not going to die. The moral of the story, never give a speech in freezing weather. And if all else fails, when all else fails, folks, picture your audience naked. It really works. It does. So what have we covered today, according to John Kennedy? Tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. So now I'm telling you what I told you. Listening skills, fear, and speaking skills. And that's all, folks. If we have any questions, my email is right there. It's my name, rdiottalevi @nu.edu. Again, it's RDIOTALEVI @nu.edu. If there are questions, please ask. If we have some in the chat, Emily.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we do.
All right.
I want to, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to put that together for us. I have a question about how to do public speaking in the online setting, right? Because it's one thing to be in front of people physically, but it's another thing to be trying to tackle the public speaking piece through Zoom per se.
Right.
So what the question in the chat, and then I have another question after this, but the question in the chat is the moving around stuff, right? What do you suggest doing in your personal experience for the moving around piece in the virtual space?
Okay, well, as you see, I'm in my secret bunker in Florida, and it's very funny that even though the trees move and the water moves, my hair doesn't, my shirt doesn't, but have a nice, colorful setting. It relaxes people, and you can't, do the Mexican shuffle. You can't do that. You can't keep rocking back and forth. Those are all distracting. And unfortunately, with me, if the hands, look how big my hands are. I got big hands. But when you have a background like that, your hands really, if you have a background too, you tend to all of a sudden disappear from the background when you turn and everything. So if you're going to use a background, which I strongly suggest, use one, but stay focused, use the hands a little bit. To me, maybe it's because I have experience. I think this is easier than the actual looking at everybody, because if you've got 30, 40, 100 people watching you, not all of them have the cameras on, and I can't look at 30, 40, 100 cameras. I'm looking at my PowerPoint. So I just zone everybody out And as opposed to I'm talking to you right now, Emily, you're looking at me, I'm looking at you. That's a
Yeah.
lot different. That's almost like live. The PowerPoint presentation I did is much easier because I could focus on what I wanted to talk about. As long as I don't have any background noises, distracting noises, put the pets away and stuff. To me, I think it's easier. And so I hope that kind of answers it. I think that this, stuff that we have now with Zoom and FaceTime and WhatsApp and everything, it's fabulous for we teachers because we can bring everybody together like this. I couldn't have brought all these people. We've got people all the way from Massachusetts to California to Florida. This is fantastic because now I'm hitting people from all around the nation. And I've talked to people from around the world when I do presentations in law. So
Absolutely. And I like your suggestion of having a clean space for your background, and then the moving around piece. I appreciate your opinion on that as well too. I find that if I'm like rocking back and forth, it is distracting, and that would be different than me being in a space where it was there was a physical presence. I might walk a little bit from one side of the room to the other to engage my audience. So I think environment matters. And so I appreciate that.
Or Emily, excuse me, if you don't have that, you're showing your actual background, you might have a blackboard. You might have a painting, a picture, something. And if you're doing art, for example, we're going to study the Mona Lisa, you can get up and then point to the stuff and all, and then sit right back down. So you can use the non-PowerPoint, non-graphics like that, and actually show where you are, or you show like, hey, I've got here, for example, I have a clock there, and magically, and that's magic, So, and I might want to talk about how I made that clock, and so I'm going to show it, as an example. There's so many things you could do on the internet. That's why I love it.
And thank you so much for that. I do have a question about background suggestions or software maybe that you use. I am going to pop in the chat. We do have some Zoom backgrounds offered in our Graduate Studies Support Center, so I'll pop that in the chat.
Okay.
But I did want to mention I know some other people that live in the Zoom space. Sometimes they use the backgrounds that are provided through Zoom, but also I've seen presenters use a green screen behind them. I don't know if that's something that you've used before in the past.
I hate it.
Okay.
I like I see your office and everything there, and then they've got the fake offices. I've seen people in fake libraries. I love it. Of course, I'm from Florida, so I use the palm trees and the sand and the surf and all. I can't stand it. I mean, it looks like they're in some twilight zone, or it looks like they're in jail or something. I hate the backgrounds like that. They're really dull and drab. I think this background I have relaxes people. It's like we're at the beach. Let's just have some fun at the beach here. I'm thinking of getting somebody to hand me some type of like Coca-Cola or something, dressed as a waiter or something. But no, honestly, I like the background. The office is good. The library is good. The surf, stuff like that. But the monocolor, no, I don't like it.
Yeah, sometimes I see people disappear in those. I have another question. Again, Howard, I am going to pop that in the chat, I promise, to your Zoom background question thing. But one more question before we wrap up today. One of the questions in the chat is about public speaking. Let's say you're talking and you happen to notice someone falls asleep. Yeah. Is this from boredom from the conversation? I mean, this could happen in a corporate setting, in a public setting, in a classroom, the list goes on here as to why that will be. So what are your strategies around that?
I have a suggestion and I say ignore it, unless they start snoring. But I have a friend, Emilio, and he's 84 years old, and he goes to presentations. He lives in the Villages, Florida. He falls asleep through all of them because he stays up late at night. So he's not insulting the speaker. When I was in law school at New England School of Law in Boston, we're exhausted. And we were law students. We go, just as our students here. And as you know, students, you get tired. One gentleman put his head on the desk, middle of the classroom, and went to sleep. That was during the Tylenol scare, where somebody was putting poison in Tylenol. It was a big scare way back in the 80s. And my property professor, Colin Gillis, goes, "What's this, the Tylenol group? Did he take the big plunge?" It was hysterical. We all laughed. We let him sleep there. And finally, everybody left the room. And the very last person to leave the room, the professor was gone. We woke him up. The professor didn't care. He just went on. The Tylenol scare was nothing to make a joke of, but he made a joke of it. You could make a joke of it if they're snoring a little bit, or if somebody shakes them and they go, what happened? You don't want to make them nervous. You don't want to embarrass them. If they're good sports about it and they smile and they go, sorry, then they're telling you, like, I'm a good sport. You can say something to me. But if somebody wakes up and goes, oh boy, that's the quickest way to lose them. Quickest way to lose them. You don't want to insult your audience, antagonize your audience, and you don't want them to be small or make them smaller or belittle them. So I would say just ignore it, especially if it's in the back. Don't take it personally, as you were mentioning, Emily. It might not be. It could be like my friend Emily. It could be that law student who was exhausted. Don't take it personally that you're boring, okay? In fact, if you're having trouble with eye contact and you really don't like to make eye contact, keep looking at them. They're not looking back. So they're no threat to you. So look around the room a little bit, but keep talking to them. Like, you're really getting this, as long as no one's looking at, why is he talking to a corpse? So if you get away with it, do it.
A tip to lower your anxiety. Find the person who
Oh,
maybe
yeah,
stayed up way too late last night. Yeah.
Make sure, picture them dead, asleep, and naked all at once. And then there you go. So no threat.
Well, I really appreciate your insight, and I do appreciate your experience in public speaking and your tips that you've shared with us today. And thank you again to all of our attendees for sharing your thoughts, asking your questions. And until the next time, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.